Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for the introduction. I'm Daniel. I have been with ProGlove for the last 5 years. I work in the industrial design team. So our team does all of the design surrounding the hardware that our company produces. So the things you can actually touch and wear and put on. And I have in the past also worked on certain software projects. So I hope that everything we go through today is relevant to all parties, though many of my photos might be hardware examples. Sorry about that up front. So maybe just jumping right in. Short introduction. What does ProGlove do? So we build wearable barcode scanners and software solutions for the industrial Internet of Things or industrial use cases. We put the human first, so we really tried to build tools that people like to use in these sort of rugged use cases. They have to work 8 hours a day and need through the integrated hardware and software, we empower the workforce with smarter and more efficient workflows. So yeah, basically just a real quick example, our main product is sort of two components, this textile wearable that you put on your hand and a scanner that you clip on. And together these connect with various smartphones or industrial devices to basically serve the customer's need in their various logistics processes. So our main use cases are within retail, e-commerce, automotive, manufacturing, and our portfolio, or maybe just a quick company overview. We were founded in 2014. So here you can see a picture of our founders when they were a lot less tired and a lot younger. They got third place in this Make It Wearable competition and decided to found a company around this idea of a smart glove. They quickly realized that a general smart glove would be a very vague or difficult product to bring to market. So we, after talking to users and the use cases, they zoned in on this use case of barcode scanning. So in 2016, the first product was launched, which was the Mark 1. And here you can see it with the glove. And then fast forward to today, we are about 350 employees globally. We have offices, headquarters in Munich, Chicago, Belgrade, and also in the UK. And super happy to be presenting today from the Belgrade office. Quick portfolio overview, just so you guys can see the spectrum of what we offer and what we work on also as a design team and product team is our basic offering of scanners for different use cases with different scan ranges and robustness levels from entry level to most advanced, various wearables for sort of one size fits all use cases or more rugged durable use cases, and then also niche use cases where maybe having a scanner on the back of the hand is actually an impediment. And then we offer a variety of connectivity options with which you can connect these wearables to your customer backend, and also where you can manage your devices and see analytics surrounding the device performance. I won't dive too much into this, into the company background after that last slide. If you're interested, there's a really nice talk from our colleague, Matthias Kirchner, from last year's Roadmaps conference. He really dives in depth in the background of ProGlove, how we started with the hardware MVP and how we transitioned to software scale-up. Today, I would focus a bit more on the design team and prototyping. So again, feel free to check it out. It's on YouTube and it's quite detailed. Maybe just context for the design team at ProGlove. So we are a mix of industrial designers, UX, UI designers, and communication designers. We are a part of the product team or the product organization with a couple of colleagues sitting on the marketing team. And our main goal, or what's most important to us, is that every designer at ProGlove can work on projects end to end. So going from this initial discovery phase to the execution and deliver phase. Though we're part of the product org, we try to embed our designers into the end-to-end teams, working on specific products or feature families. so that we are directly working with the engineers and trying to maintain the design intent throughout it being released to production. And these are some really old post-its from an old design onboarding, but I think it's still a really nice visualization of where we believe the most important part of our contribution happens. So towards this front end of the design process where we really define what to build. So this is where the workload is highest on our end because we are really opening the solution space. We are testing with users. We're evaluating which concepts we should choose to refine, and eventually also with the other stakeholders, which ones we should realize. And the reason why there's such a high value on this portion is if this is done with the proper diligence, then the risk for future iterations further down the development cycle is reduced. So ideally, if we explore the solution space properly in the beginning and consider all of the user and customer feedback, then we reduce risk for spending more money later on. And one of the most important tools in our arsenal to validate and reduce this risk is prototyping. So there are many different types of prototypes. I wrote down a few that we use internally. So appearance prototypes you can see in the top left. These are usually more focused towards communicating a vision or for marketing purposes to basically show in a high gloss, high fidelity way what the vision for the product is. So probably not functional, but can be used to gain traction with certain stakeholders. You do have to be careful with appearance prototypes because basically you don't want your users or customer to get fixated on these too early in the process. We also use many works-like prototypes. So this nice Frankenstein scanner with all these cables sticking out of it. If this was software, this could be some sort of a click dummy that is a mixture of screenshots and other types of elements pasted on. So these are really where you can test the interactions with the users and see, does the technology or the interaction meet the need? And are we headed in the right direction when it comes to the different concepts? In the bottom left, you can see sort of high fidelity prototypes. So this is really far down the line of already when designs are being executed on and handed over to engineering, where you have prototypes made out of real materials. They have already been built so they can be assembled and validate production. This would probably, if we were translating it into the software world, be something like a first front-end mock-up where you can actually go through and test and see if anything has been missed. But these we use for robustness testing and to see, will the product hold up and perform in the real environment as we expect it. And last but not least is low-fidelity prototypes. So these are really early mock-ups made out of very accessible materials in a rough and fast way to just visualize a design intent. So here it's specifically around form factor mock-ups of a scanning product. But these are also what I would like to focus on today, as we see that low fidelity prototyping benefits us in our process very often. Wanted to share some insights on how this works for us. I will start with a quick story, one of my favorite prototyping stories. So back in 2019, after we had brought this Mark II product, the mid-range and standard range variants to the market, we were looking into this idea of bringing a display into our wearable form factor. So if you see this middle image, we knew that many customers were using our scanners paired with smartphones or industrial smartphones, and often having them mounted on the arm to provide worker guidance throughout the process. So if they're in a warehouse, when they scan a parcel, they need to know where they should go next, or they need to know where they should place this parcel. Since their business app is usually some sort of an Android app, then it makes sense that they take the phone that the Android app is running on and they put it on the worker's arm. But as you can see from this image, it doesn't look very comfortable. So we were looking into, can we bring this display to the scanner and somehow put the worker guidance on the back of the hand, so that the user would only need to pull out the phone in small exceptions. And you can see on the right, this would eventually turn into the Mark Display product that we offer today. But at this point in the process, we weren't 100% sure if we could even meet customer requirements with such a small display, or if it would even be feasible to build from a technical perspective. So what we did is we built some very rough prototypes using just foam, plastic, paper, maybe some actual display components we had laying around, because we were a bit interested in this specific, in this e-ink technology. And we, as usual, scheduled some customer visits. One nice benefit of being in Munich is there's usually a good amount of manufacturing and logistics happening around the area, so we can quickly go to the customers and get feedback. We scheduled this visit. We told the shop floor manager we wanted to go talk to users and also with him about the use case and this idea for a new scanning product. And when the shop floor manager asked us, what do we want to show the workers? What do we want to talk to them about? We pulled these prototypes out and he looked at us like he couldn't tell if we were serious. And he said, you really think you're going to get some feedback from these things? And we told him, let's try it. And after like a good solid hour of talking to users about the process, their thoughts about wearable displays, we already had a really great insights into use case fit, user considerations, etc. So yeah, if you ask me, did I feel embarrassed as a then 25-year-old showing this 50-plus-year-old warehousing manager? Yes. So I think you all know this quote, or that's exactly the right feeling. I think you all know this quote from Reid Hoffman: if you're not embarrassed about the first version of your product, then you've launched too late. We also took this even one step back and say, if you're not embarrassed when showing your first prototype to a customer, then you're definitely showing it too late. Because basically low fidelity prototypes are supposed to be a conversation starter. So just through this one interaction, we were able to start a conversation with the users and the manager about their shop floor process, the exceptions in their process, so what can go wrong that's out of not usually in their plan, what hardware do they currently use, what does their business app look like, what information do the workers really need to consume versus what is just shown to them as sort of nice to have information. Do users need to input anything into the business app? How often do they need to do this? Is it a regular part of the process, or is it one of these exceptions? How do they display information? Like, what hierarchy do they use? Do they use colors to communicate meeting? And on and on. So not only did we have this conversation, but users would also take these prototypes and begin to show us how might they use them, and even more importantly, how they would hate to use them. So even if we're in a very early understand phase and we're just going to use cases to gather information, we like to bring some kind of prototypes with us to visualize a couple of different solution spaces, to test early hypotheses and to get the conversation going. So it can very well be that you show up to the visit or to the call and show some mock-ups and find out you're headed totally in the wrong direction. But at least it's super early in the process and you learn you can rule some concepts out and you have a conversation started to gather the real requirements. So it's really beneficial to have something early on, even if it's initial contact with the customer. And yeah, they might laugh at you depending on the fidelity, but usually you can prove them wrong. The other big learning for us is that low fidelity prototypes force you to think on a conceptual level. So we all know this great feeling when you're in the early ideation stage and you get into a flow and you come up with sketches and wireframes or mock-ups around what you think are many different concepts or ideas. But then you share them in review or with a colleague and you realize, hey, aren't these all just different versions of the same idea? So in this early in this early framing phase, a low fidelity prototype, whether it's a sketch or a model or a wireframe, it should represent really a single solution space in which there can be many variations. But doing that and getting to the point where you visualize one solution space forces you to move on to the next ones and come up with completely different approaches for solving the problem. It also lets stakeholders then compare the value of these vastly different solutions against one another, rather than getting lost in the details of variants of concept one, for example. So in our context, this is super helpful, as we're often evaluating different combinations of hardware and software that work together to solve a customer need. So if we can visualize these in low fidelity and show them to a customer early on, we can avoid getting fixated on a solution that for us might seem super feasible, but might actually require a huge effort from the customer to integrate into what is already usually a complex industrial environment. The other learning that we've had over the last years is low fidelity prototypes can also help internal stakeholders or the engineering team focus on the value of a solution. So if you think about how customer can weigh these different concepts against one another, it also helps internally to look at concepts on the right level. So oftentimes we get fixated on some logical technical path to solve a customer problem or to deliver features with different levels of complexity. But by taking a step back and looking at them as options visualized in a simple way that really focuses on representing the uniqueness or the unique selling point, you get away from fixating on how difficult is it to implement it, and you focus on understanding this value to the customer. So rather than looking at it as, oh, this is a low-hanging fruit feature that the team might see as very logical to implement next, you're actually looking at it more as, hey, what are future scenarios that we're looking to create? And those can be visualized in a simple way. Again, whether it's through a model, mock-up of an interface, or even just post-its describing what is the scenario, right? Is it we've switched to hardware as a service or something, but these scenarios can be visualized in really simple ways, and then the team can actually talk about what is the value of putting the effort to get to this new scenario. So it's still possible to decide later on for the path that is most feasible, but it costs nothing to have these discussions on this level, especially if you're visualizing them in low fidelity. So it also promotes this culture where all stakeholders, not just product and design, should be able to think on some solutions level and not just on a feature implementation level. Last but not least, low fidelity prototypes should be used to get the ideas rolling. So in the beginning of an understand or iteration phase or ideation phase, where the amount of areas that you need to dive into to explore can be really intimidating. So low fidelity prototypes can be used as a spark to get these ideas rolling. The nice thing is that these types of prototypes, whether it's a prototype of a user flow made out of Post-its or UI mock-ups of different screens we might want to offer, different features we might want to offer, or form factor prototypes, these are all quite accessible for all stakeholders. So the materials and skills needed are quite low. Like even if you look at a form factor mock-up out of foam, anybody can do this, right? It's just like sandpaper and a knife and some modeling foam. So it sometimes feels like a bigger hurdle to get into this ideation phase, but actually the goal of low fidelity prototyping is to bring more stakeholders into it and really get different disciplines involved, push out the ideas that are stuck in your head and are blocking you from moving on to new options. And how does this look in the context of our process? So just the classic visualization of the double diamond design process, discovery, defining what the problem statement is, then developing the solutions and delivering. Usually you have this low to high fidelity prototyping spectrum. So during the discovery phase, when you're opening up the scope of the different problem statements and trying to figure out what the exact opportunity is, having these low fidelity prototypes to visualize many different problem areas or solution spaces is really helpful. And as you begin to define what you want to zone in on, then you can have something in slightly higher fidelity stating the problem exactly as it is. And same thing with this develop. So once you have a problem statement and now you're working on developing ideas or solutions within that solution space, you again start at a low fidelity, try to get them all out there at a similar level, compare them against one another with all the stakeholders. And then as you decide on a concept and get down to the deliver phase, it's getting higher and higher fidelity, and the testing is getting more detailed as well. So just a quick summary. Basically, low fidelity prototypes are supposed to be a conversation starter. It's to get the ball rolling at the customer. It helps you gather the requirements from different stakeholders, whether it's the actual users, the managers. In our case, also a lot of times IT is involved. They act as something that can help you lead the conversation rather than just going in with questions and hypothetical situations. They should force you to think on this conceptual level. So really taking a step back and asking yourself, are we looking at different solution spaces or just variants of one solution space? And they should really help your team focus on a solutions value. So not on this, hey, what is easy to implement or what could we do, but what actually scenario do we want to create for the customer that will bring the most value? And then decide, is the effort to implement valuable enough? And then, yeah, last but not least, should be used to get the ideas rolling. So favorite method when you're kicking off a project is to do some ideation, get different stakeholders involved, pen, paper, very accessible materials, and try to get everything on the board so that you can then get past the first dozen bad ideas before you get into more concrete solutions to be considered. That's it. Was a little bit quick today. Just a PS. We feel free to meet our team tonight at the ProGlove booth. We will be a funny mix of recruiters, POs, and designers. So stop by and say hi. Try out the product. Yeah. Any questions? I looked at the chat.
Thank you, Daniel. I think this was very, very useful and very insightful.